eligible beneficiaries are being locked out of the system. In the space of 5 days, we've already got another 140 odd people who have from across the country who have indicated they too have been locked out of this grant. Their ID numbers have too been taken up by fraudsters and they are not receiving the grant. This fraud and criminal syndicate seems to be targeting a vulnerable group, our young people, our youth. They have exploited the country's high unemployment rates. They have exploited the fact that not many youth who are then turning 18 years old will actually be aware of this grant or aware of how to apply for this grant. You know, we have South Africans watching to find out what is going on, but we also have criminals watching, because at the end of the day, this is a 250 billion rand cash cow, SASSA and the social grants. So it's 250 billion rand that the department gives to SASSA that is at stake here.
And, you know, we compared it to the American COVID grant, you know, to try and explain to them. But even the students who did understand were pretty shocked, who did have a prior knowledge of this. They were shocked. They didn't even know that it was possible for them to apply and would have never personally...
Can look into this thing, I will be very happy. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Murray. Honourable Abrahams.
Thank you, Chairperson. And Chairperson, first let me thank you for calling this urgent committee at an issue that strikes at the very heart of the social contract with our most vulnerable citizens in our country. I wish to thank Joel and Ver for your presentation and for your project. You did this project in what I've heard within 3 weeks. You know, in government things takes very long, but you managed to put this all together in 3 weeks when you should be preparing for your examination, so thank you very much to that. But you've also given us a research report on what members of this committee have been saying for over the years since the introduction of the grant, and that is that eligible beneficiaries are being locked out of the system. And if you take your 60 applicants with all the emails that we've been sending through to SASSA over the years, plus Chairperson with the DA has called for, you know, other people who have been facing problems with the SRD grant. In the space of 5 days, we've already got another 140 odd people who have from across the country who have indicated they too have been locked out of this grant. Their ID numbers have too been taken up by fraudsters and they are not receiving the grant. So I think as this goes on, more people will be coming forward to say this has happened to me as well, which then goes back to, you know, Minister, your opening remarks where you said, you know, the system does not exclude beneficiaries. Well, here's the evidence. The system does exclude eligible beneficiaries. So, Chairperson, I also just would like to highlight that this fraud and criminal syndicate seems to be targeting a vulnerable group, our young people, our youth. They have exploited the country's high unemployment rates. They have exploited the fact that not many youth who are then turning 18 years old will actually be aware of this grant or aware of how to apply for this grant. And therefore they don't immediately apply for a grant that they are eligible for, you know, because they've turned 18. So it's these fraudsters and criminals who are then locking these young people out of receiving this grant. And we've learned that this grant stands between them and transport to a job interview. It stands between them and data to apply for that job opportunity. And it's turning young and vulnerable young people, like women, like young girls, who become more economically dependent on abusive older men just to sustain themselves so that they have a slice of bread before they go sleep at night. So that is the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in. And we can talk about numbers and figures and stats and all of that, but it is the human being, the humanity that this grant is supposed to be the social protection floor of that has now seems to have found cracks in it, and people are falling through. Young people becoming despondent with their government who is meant to care and protect them, but they are not feeling that because we are in this situation. And Chairperson, it would appear that this SRD grant is somewhat of a double-edged sword because we need it to be easily accessible for everybody without smartphones in the most rural parts of our country to apply, but we also need it to be secure enough so that syndicates out there are not able to penetrate. So my clarity-seeking questions for the presentation, and I've watched some of your interviews, so I've know some of the answers that I've been assisted with, and I've seen some of the things. But just for me to understand your timeline of engagement with SASSA, you know, when did you first try to reach out to SASSA to notify them of your findings, and how did you do that? Did you do that via their contact numbers? Because we know that's also an issue when many people try to reach SASSA, because the minister has indicated you've been invited on several occasions to come and engage with SASSA, but if you can just get clarity on that and why hasn't that engagement's happened. Then to also ask, have you been approached by any of the banking institutions for you to come and present your findings to them? Because Chairperson, as we've heard, there are actual bank accounts being fraudulently created. So there is some responsibility on behalf of the financial institutions to play its role. And then I'd also like to understand if you are able to give the information, what other government databases you used in your findings, and if you've notified, if any of those other government departments have been in contact with you to identify their vulnerabilities. And then I've got another question. The students that you surveyed on your campus, did they have an understanding that the SRD grant was meant for the destitute? It was meant for the very poor of the poor who, like I say, this grant stands between them and going to bed hungry. And if not, what was their understanding of this grant? And then, lastly, Chairperson, I've gone through SASSA's presentation and I have a series of questions for them, but I think for the same reason that SASSA has indicated in their presentation, there are certain things they cannot take us through on this televised platform for security reasons. I imagine there are also certain things that the students cannot take us through because it is being broadcast to not just South Africa, but outside of South Africa, and we have South Africans watching to find out what is going on, but we also have criminals watching, because at the end of the day, this is a 250 billion rand cash cow, SASSA and the social grants. So it's 250 billion rand that the department gives to SASSA that is at stake here. So Chairperson, I will leave it there, and the rest of the questions I will have afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Abrahams. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Sure, thank you very much. We'd like to thank the 7 honourable members for giving us your very valuable and very, very good input in the situation and regarding our presentation. And we'd just like to, respond to a few of them and engage with you and, to further gauge the impact you are requesting. So, to the first honourable member, we thank you very much for your input. We are here today and were invited to present our findings on the SRD grants in a layman's terminology, so that everyone who is here understands what we are presenting. We would definitely like to personally provide to you, technical specifications if you would like, but we are not in our capacity here today to do that. We were asked to come here today to present just non-technical specifications on this. Secondly, we would like to address those allegations that we got from you about us hacking. We did not hack in this specific situation. We were, in our slideshow, we clarified the legal methods we used, and to just reiterate, we'd use the SASSA publicly available systems to generate our data so we were able to put ID numbers in their system, publicly available, anyone could have done it, and get a response. Thirdly, in capacity of POPI Act, we are not companies. POPI Act, if you have read the law, only applies to public and private companies. In capacity, we are acting here today as individuals and in a personal capacity, which means POPI Act does not stand any value in this investigation and briefing. Finally, we would love to welcome your idea of a report and in going into an investigation, and we support your idea of going to the department and asking them for an investigation into the situation, and we thank you for that valid input, and we support that. Sure, just give us a moment to further clarify some things. Okay, to continue with our feedback, we are now going to move to our second honourable member who raised some questions, and we thank you for your input. The first thing we'd like to support is the cross-department use of information, right? Whether that's NASFIS being included, whether it's SARS, whether it's other government services that people are using, integrated into the SASSA system, because from my personal case, the Department of Social Development SASSA system should have picked up the fact that I was receiving money more than 600 Rand in my bank account, that I am a registered taxpayer, and that I did receive a paycheck in that month. So we'd love to support that idea, and the department, on interview with Mr. Van Vrede last week did claim that, they are using these systems in place. But secondly on that, with your idea of facial verification, and we completely support this. We understand that SASSA has told the public and came out publicly that this facial verification is in place. But after our interview, Mr. Cedras did phone SASSA as in a public capacity to the hotline and requested that can he get the SMS facial verification link so he can sort out his application and resolve the issue. This was completed on last week. He'll probably break that down further when we go into the, I think, fourth MP's response. But we did not get any facial verification link. We were told by the SASSA person, the person on the call center, which we reached out to, that there is no system like this in place. The eKYC or eID verified facial system has not been put in place. We maybe can assume that maybe that people haven't been trained on it yet, and it might be in place, but that's just an assumption. And what we can factually tell you is we were told by SASSA on the phone that the system is not in place. I'd like to now transfer over to my counterpart, Mr. Cedras, to continue.
Okay, in response to the DA honorable member, you asked us about our timeline. So I want to give you a timeline of the calls that I've made to the National SASSA helpline. And I made these calls in my personal capacity as a citizen, and I was trying to raise the issue of my identity having been stolen. So I made the first call on the 2nd of October, and in this call I was told that I would receive a response in 24 hours, a SMS link to verify myself. I then made 2 calls to the hotline on the 11th of October, and the first set of these calls, I first tried to call their regional call centers, but what happened was I was unable to reach any regional office of SASSA. All of their numbers either said that it does not exist, or it would answer immediately, but there's no response on the other end. Then the final call was last week, Thursday, I believe. And in this call, I asked them if my application has been marked as fraudulent. To this date, my application is still not marked as fraudulent. And in this call, I also asked whether it would be possible to verify myself via the SMS link that was talked about on TV. The person on the other end told me that they do not have the system in place yet on their side. Then, in response to your second question regarding whether or not we've been approached by banks, I would like to confirm that we have been approached by banks, but we will not be naming those.
Just a final thing to add to Joel as a response to the Democratic Alliance MP. You asked us if the students in the Stellenbosch University survey if we asked the students if they knew these grants were for destitute people. And as a response to that, we'd like to say that many of these students who we verbally consented to this didn't even know what SASSA is. We had to explain to them that there's this thing called SRD 370 where unemployed people who are in extreme vulnerable situations have access to this. And, we compared it to the American COVID grant, to try and explain to them. But even the students who did understand were pretty shocked, who did have a prior knowledge of this. They were shocked. They didn't even know that it was possible for them to apply and would have never personally thought to apply in their capacity as a registered university student at a tertiary institution in South Africa. Please give us a moment. We will continue with this shortly.
Honourable members, I hope you understand that our presenters need some time to, confer and make sure that their responses are to the expectation of the honourable members. They seem to have finished now.
Okay, this response is for the Reverend from the MK Party, honourable member. So you asked us, well, first you stated that you feel that it is a human problem and not a system problem. Our findings suggest that it could be a systemic problem, but we will not rule out the human factor. That is definitely possible. Then you suggested that by making it harder to apply, we might limit accessibility to the SRD grant. That's my understanding. And we feel like the recommendations we've put forward, specifically things like the rate limiting, we don't feel like that would make it difficult for an individual to apply, because rate limiting will only apply to those that try to abuse the system. You then asked about FICA systems at bank, or you stated, and we feel that this is also a good recommendation. The banks could also take over the verification because they have that technology already in place for when people create bank accounts. So we do agree with you on that. And then I want to again emphasize the fact that we did not hack any systems, we did not breach any systems. You wanted to know whether or not generating ID numbers is allowed, and our view of it is that this is allowed because it is a simple algorithm. ID numbers are composed, what ID numbers are composed of, it is public information. It is published on numerous government websites, including the Western Cape government's website. And all we simply did was use the way, we took the way that ID numbers are composed, and we just generated hundreds of thousands of these. But it's in line with we just used a simple algorithm to do it. There was nothing illegal about that. Thank you.
Will that be all? Oh, okay.
Okay, to continue on with our feedback, we thank the next honourable member, the fifth responder. I'm not sure what political affiliation you are, but we welcome that story. It's a very tragic story to hear, people who've been battling with this issue of grant fraud since July 2023. That is actually when my grant was stolen because I turned 18 in July 2023, and I was immediately paid out a grant in July 2023, which, you know, it's a very, very sad situation that the most vulnerable actors in South Africa don't even have a way to dispute that the phone number registered to their SASSA grant is not theirs, right? In all our cases, the phone number used in the SASSA application was not your personal phone number. So it was a fraudster's phone number, and there's no way at all to change this online or dispute it online. The only way you can do it is phoning the call center. And as Mr. Cedras has said, he tried that multiple times. And today, to this date, they still have not resolved that issue. And the phone number linked to his SASSA grant is not his. It's a completely fraudster's ID numbers. Please give us a moment while we deliberate the last two responses to get.
Okay, finally, in response to the statement about the technicalities of our findings, we are willing to directly engage with SASSA and perhaps compile a report or something like that regarding what we did, you know, in terms of the technical details. And then in response to your question, Honourable Member, you asked about slide 8, specifically what the probability of it being that the application rate is so high. And we feel like the probability is extremely low that is actually possible. It shouldn't be possible that there is a 91% application rate. It doesn't seem legitimate. And you know, if we look at our findings from our survey, I think that confirms it, because over 90% of our survey respondents said that they did not create that application themselves. And then you asked us about the attitude of SASSA towards us. In the media statement, we believe SASSA did confirm most of our findings, and in the SABC interview, I think Via would be able to respond to that. No.
Look, on the SABC interview, we had the delight of, you know, engaging with someone from SASSA who we did try to reach out to before, and we weren't doing this from I'm a executive, or I'm a person who's found this. We are concerned citizens who said, we found this issue, we don't know what to do. And when you search up, all we did as responsible citizens was call the SASSA hotline. As a matter of fact, in all instances of this issue, whenever SASSA says, you'll probably hear them say it, we urge people to call the hotline. But the hotline is not equipped to deal with this many fraudulent cases, as we've seen with Mr. Cedras. They are not able to deal with all of these people, you know, especially when I remember when I phoned the SASSA hotline, I was on hold for 30 minutes and then the phone just died. So when there are this many fraudulent cases, it's important to understand that there is no quick and easy fix. You can't say everyone must call the hotline, because there are too many cases of this. I'm not sure if Joel has anything to add to that.